Hello everyone, it's Carrie at Inky Bee Journals and Ephemera. Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time visiting my channel, hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. So today we are up to part 7 of the Shabby Pink Roses journal, which is this journal here. And today we are going to be stitching in the signatures. So we have 4 signatures to put in today. If you haven't seen parts 1 through to part 6 so far of this journal and you would like to, then I will put a link in the description box below for a playlist titled Junk Journal Tutorials, and you will find all the parts to this journal, previous journals and future journals in that playlist. So without further ado, let's get started. So for today's tutorial, you will need a piece of paper. This is just a piece of scrap paper that it's really just a piece of printer paper, so it doesn't need to be anything important, and you just need to cut it to the width and the height of your journal cover spine, and I will show you what to do with that in a moment. You will need something to poke your holes with. Now I just have an awl here, and you will need something to do some marking with. I have a pencil here and I have a pen, and you will need something to stitch your signatures in with, and I just have some embroidery floss here. And you might find having a couple of clips handy, and I have a ruler. This is a Tim Holtz Ideology ruler. It's a zero gravity ruler, and I will try to pop a link in the description box for one of these if you are interested. Now, if you are using one of these but you want to have neat holes, because these can sort of create a bit of an unsightly hole look, so you might find having something like this, which is the We Are Memory Keepers Crocodile Big Bite. Now, you don't have to have one of these. I will try to put a link in the description box if you are interested in one of these, but this is a hole punch and an eyelet setter, and the reason I will use this in the cover is simply because it has all of this space to use when punching the holes. Because if you have something like this one, you might find that you will find that it will not be long enough to go down the height of your journal, because when you're using this, it will only go in so far, and you will need to be able to get to the center here as well. And that's where something like this can be handy, because as you can see, it has the length. But if you don't have a crocodile and you don't want to pay the cost of investing in one, you can still use one of these. You will also need a needle for doing your threading with. I just have a big eye needle here, or a wool needle or something like that. What you do need to keep in mind is that the holes that you are making are going to be big enough for your needle to go completely through. So without further ado, we'll get started on putting this template together so that we can go ahead and stitch our signatures in. Now, to get to this point, as I said, cut your piece of paper to the width and the length of your cover spine. And we need to work out where the center of that is. So how we do that is we fold this piece in half and we fold it in half all the way along, and we just crease along that line. Along that line all the way along. And when we do that, we open it, we've created this crease line through here. So just so you can see this, I will use my pencil and mark that line for you, my pen. So we've created this line through here and we folded the whole piece in half like this. Then we need to figure out where the center is the other way. So how we do that is we fold it in the other direction in half and we crease that all the way along, just like we did before. So we now have this crease line here. So once again, I will mark that crease line so you can see it. And what we've created is this cross space in the center, right through here. And that is the middle of our spine piece, or our template piece. Now we need to work out our spacing for 4 signatures to go in. So what I have done is I've worked out, I will just move the signatures out of the cover for a moment and I'll bring this in and show you. Now you will see on my cover that I have some lines and some dots on the fabric area. I'm not worried about those being seen when the journal is finished because it's only me who's going to see it, and for the purpose of showing you and making it easier for you to see, I've done this in pen and pencil. But if you're not comfortable doing that, you might want to find another way to mark what you're doing. If you're using paper or cardstock instead of fabric, you might be able to just rub out your lines. Now, what I have done, actually I will fold this out the other way so I can show you. Okay, so when I cut this, I cut it so that if I turn it this way, I've cut it so that I have got an even amount of space at the top and at the bottom before this paper starts. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to make sure that when I do my stitching, that my signatures are within the edge of the cardstock that I have covered in this fabric. And that is so that when I am putting the holes in, I don't run the risk of tearing right on the edge of that cardstock underneath. So I've got an even spacing at the top and the bottom here. And as you can see, my center line is right in line with the stitching at the top of this pocket. Now, I was not thinking straight when I put this pocket in because I didn't actually need to put this bit here in the center. I've just stitched one long piece in here and I didn't actually need to do that, but I wasn't thinking at the time and that's what I did. So I have this little bit of pocket here. I don't actually need it, but I don't actually want to put my hole through that stitch line or through the top of this material. So I'm going to put my holes just above that stitch line, or just above that material edge. So where I've got the center on my template here, I'm actually going to move it across just a little bit. So that's what I've actually done on this other one that I had started with. As you can see, I've got my holes punched already. But what I've done is I've worked out, when I bring this back in and show you, I've worked out that they are all approximately 1/8 of an inch in from the top edge of the cardstock here where the paper starts, and the same at the bottom. But I wanted my first hole to be about 1 centimetre in from where this folds here, and the same on this side, about 1 centimetre in from where this folds here. So I didn't specifically measure with the ruler, but what I did is I estimated roughly where I thought the center of the spine is, and I was fairly close. I think mightn't have been exact on the line, but it was fairly close. You could actually just take this piece and work out from there where your center is. So I was actually a little off the center, but that's okay. But from where these fold here on the sides, I've actually gone in by about 1 centimetre at this side, in about 1 centimetre, and on this side in about 1 centimetre. Then from where my centre line is here, I've gone either side of that just a little bit, so that this first dot and the second dot, or line I should say, is about 1 centimetre. It's probably a little bit more, but it's not exact, and that's okay. But I've just done a line either side of that centre. I just wanted to roughly space them, and then I've done the same thing at the bottom here. And I've got my dots based on this. So how I figured out where these dots were going, or how far down these dots were going to go, is I have this stitch template folded in half, and I place it along where the first line is at the top and the bottom, in line with everything. And I've just taken my pen actually, and I've put a dot right where the hole, right in line with the hole on my template, which is about 1 centimetre roughly in from the edge, from the top edge. I've done the same at the bottom and put a dot here because it's about 1 centimetre in from the bottom edge, and then I've put a dot in the centre, well, not exactly in the centre, but where that cross line is, but where I've put the hole, I've put a dot. Then I moved the template across to the next set of lines, and I've repeated that process. I've put a dot here, a dot here, a dot here. Then I've gone to the third set of lines and I've done the same. Dot, dot, dot. And then I've done the same with the fourth set of lines and put in my dots. Once I've done that, I move that aside and I can bring in one of these signatures at a time. And I've actually already done the holes here, but just to save on some recording time, but I will show you what I did. So I've opened this up and I've got my template and I have it folded in half, and I've placed my template inside right up to the edge of I've placed the folded edge of the template where the holes are right up to that crease line in the center of the signature, and then I placed a dot and a dot and a dot at the center, top and the bottom, and then when I removed that, I used my awl. I placed the tip of the awl on that dot, and then I lean it forward and I poked it through until it comes out the other side. And then I've removed it, and I've done the same at the top, and I've poked it through, and then I've removed it, and then I've done the same at the bottom. I've poked it through, and then I've removed it. Now you can see I have some large paper clips on here, and this just helps me to hold the signature pages in place while I'm putting the holes in. So you can go ahead and do that with all 4 of your signatures. Well, I have 4 signatures, well, however many signatures you have for your journal. Now, if you're a little bit concerned about getting your hole placement right, or getting your stitching correct, if you're new, you might find it a little bit overwhelming to do this for the first time, because you might be worried about muddling it all up. Well, I know how it feels to be in that position, because I was in that position myself once. And what I decided to do was to practice before I did my first journal. And what I did is I just got a couple of pieces of junk paper, and I did the process a few times, and until I was sure that I had it right, and then I attempted my first journal. That way, if I muddled it up, then I'm just using scrap pieces of paper, and it didn't matter if I muddled it up, because I could start over without ruining a project. So that's just a quick little tip for you. So I've actually done all my holes in my signatures, so the next thing we can do is look at stitching. So we do one at a time. Just going to move some things over to make a little bit more room. And you always just want to make sure that you've got all of these pages, the crease lines, as closely together as you can possibly get them, all nice and tightly in there, because you don't want your signature to be too loose. So the next thing we need to do is put holes in the holes in the spine of the cover itself. So I'm going to use my crocodile for this, and I'm going to use the 3/16 setting, or I'm going to use the 1/8 setting, sorry. And I'm going to place the journal edge into this space here, and I'll just bring this up and show you this way. I hope the camera can see this, but you have two holes here in different sizes. Now this smaller hole is the 1/8 size and the larger hole is the 3/16 size. I'm going to use the smaller one, so I'm just going to make sure that this little slide across piece here is on the 1/8 setting, and that means when I squeeze this lever down, it will bring the little bar down, and that's what punches your hole. So we just bring this in, and I'm just going to move my glue bottles for a moment, and I'm just going to bring this in, and I'm going to try and line up the dot with where that's going to come down, and I'm going to press, and that leaves me with a hole where I asked it to go. Now it's a little bit rough on this side, but that's okay. That tends to happen when it's fabric. We can fix that. But we need to make these holes so that we can stitch in. And move it across and do the third hole. Move it across and do the fourth hole. And now you can see I have these 4 holes across there. It looks a little bit rough on this side, but we can fix that. So now we need to do these middle holes, and that's where this really comes in handy, because we can slide this in all the way as far as we need to go. And once again, we try to line up the hole, the dot where we want to punch, and then we punch, and we move it over to the next hole, and we punch, and then we can move it over to the next hole, and then we punch, and we move it over to the next hole, and take your time doing this. It's not a rush job, it's something you want to make sure you're getting right, because we want our holes to be as best as we can manage to get it in line with everything. So we have our middle set of holes, and now we can do the bottom. So I'm just going to turn it round, and I'm just going to repeat that same process. Now I have to find my first one, which is there. And we punch, and the second one, and punch, and move it along to the third one, and punch, and the last one, And guys, this is a little bit fiddly. It does take some time, so don't rush it. And punch. So we now have all of our holes at the top, bottom and the center. Now on the other side, as I said, it looks a little bit raggedy, but that's because we're using fabric. So I'm just going to brush these onto the floor. So how can we fix this? Well, I'm just going to move that aside and I'm going to bring in my awl and I'm just going to try and poke those back, those little wispy bits back down just a little bit and go back through this with my awl, poking them back in a little bit. And please just remember, this is very sharp, so do be careful where your fingers are because we don't want any accidents. So I'm just poking those back in and then I'm just pressing that all through just to try and neaten up the hole a little bit. So it's not perfect, but it just neatens it up that little bit. You can go in with a pair of scissors and you can go in with a pair of scissors and try and cut these little pieces off, and sometimes I will do that if I really need to. And it might depend on the type of fabric that you're using as well. You might find some may not fray quite as easily as this one does. And we'll just do the last few. Now, if you want to be brave, you can maybe put some eyelets in these holes if you have the right size and you have enough spacing between them to allow for that. Then you absolutely can put eyelets in. I'm not going to do that today. So now we have our holes in the spine piece and we have the holes already punched in the spines of the signatures. So now we can start stitching them in. So when we put these in, the holes in our signature should line up with the holes that are in the spine of your cover, and they pretty much do. If they're slightly off, that's okay, but try to get them as even as you can. And you can start at the back or the front. This is actually the front signature, so I will line that up with that one. Now, as far as stitching is concerned, now I have embroidery thread here. There are different things that you can use besides embroidery thread. You can use wax thread. You can use any type of cotton or yarn. You basically, there's a whole bunch of things you can use really. It just depends what you want to use, but you're looking for something that is strong enough that when you give it a good tug like this, that it's not going to tear apart. So I have actually doubled this up just to give it that little bit more strength. Now, how long do you need it? Well, the general rule is you take 3 lengths of your spine. So 1, 2 and 3, and I've actually got more than I need, but I would say give yourself a little bit of a extra amount just in case you need it. So what we can now do is we can open this up to the center, and you might find using one of these handy right about now. And I'm just going to clip it there because you might use this for clipping in the end of this tail so that it doesn't pull all the way through. Now, before we get started, you might want to decide if you want your tying off bow on the inside or the tying off bow on the outside. So that's a personal choice thing. And I'm probably going to put it on the inside. So if you want your bow to be on the inside, or you're tying not on the inside, you start from the inside. And if you want it to be on the outside, you start from the outside. I'd like mine to be on the inside, so I'm going to start from the inside. And what you need to do, you don't need a knot in the end of this, but what you do is you start from the inside at the middle hole. We are doing a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. So we'll start from the inside at the middle hole, and you go through to the outside, and I usually pull it through just the signature to start with because it makes it a little bit easier, and then you stop before the end goes through the hole. So I think if we stop about there, and we can move this little clip to make it just that little bit longer to just inside this pocket here, and that will just hold the end so that it doesn't fall through this hole. Now that we've got it there, we need to put it through the middle hole, but the first one in line. So we go through that hole to the outside of your cover, and we pull that all the way through. And once we've done that, we can flip this back, and we go through the top hole, but we use the first one in this row here. So we go through the top hole to the inside of the spine, and then we go through the top hole of the signature from the outside of the signature to the inside of the signature, and we pull through gently. Now that we're on the inside of the signature, we bring our thread all the way down to the bottom, and we go through the hole at the bottom from the inside of the signature to the outside of the signature. Now, my pages may have moved just a little bit because I can't get my, there we go. And we pull that through. Now, I'm sorry if I'm turning this around. Sometimes I need to turn it round. So we've gone from the center to the outside, from the outside back in through the top to the center inside of your signature again. And we've pulled our thread all the way down to the bottom. We've gone from the inside of the signature through the bottom hole to the outside of the signature. Then we're going to go through this hole here, which is the first in the bottom row. So we go through that when we find the rest of the hole. There it is, back to the outside of the cover, and we pull through. Then we go back to this first hole here, and we go back in through that hole to the inside of the cover again. And just give everything a little bit of a tug so that you're keeping everything in line. And then we're going to go back through the center hole of the signature. It's a little bit difficult sometimes, but back to the inside of the signature, and we pull through. Now what you need to try and avoid, if you can, is when you're bringing it back through this center hole, that you don't go through your center stitch, and that if you come out on the same side as your tail, like I have, just run your needle in underneath and go back to the other side of that center stitch line. Now what you can do is you can turn this back round. You can release this clip, hang on to your tail, and hang on to this end on the other side. So you must always have a tail on either side of this center stitch. Give it a bit of a tug to make sure everything's nice and tight, and just flip this over and make sure that it's not loose, which it's not. So it's nice and tight. And then just tie yourself a knot. Which is easier said than done when you have both of these strings. So just tie yourself a knot, a nice tight knot, and tie yourself 2 or 3 knots if you can. Just to help secure things nice and tightly. And then you can either do a bow if you like, which depending on how much you've got left over, you could do a little bow like that. And then you can get a pair of scissors. Here's my little snips, and just cut that off. And it doesn't matter if you have extra left over, you can find things to do with that little bit of thread if you don't want to dispose of that quite so soon. Then we can take these big paper clips off, and we've bound one signature into our cover. So if we look on the outside, we can see the stitch line, but that's okay. Now we can do the others. So we need to get some more embroidery floss, or whatever it is that you are using. And because I'm doubling it up, I need a fairly reasonable amount to start with. 1, 2, 3. Yes, we've got more than plenty there. So I'm just going to cut this, move that aside, take this bit of thread off here, and I'll use that for another project. And I'm just going to thread this onto my needle. If I can get my fingers to coordinate. Okay. And I'm just going to bring that all the way down to the bottom. Now, if you're just using one thicker thread, you don't need to double up your thread. I'm only doing it to give it some extra strength. So now that we have that ready, we can bring in the next signature and we can place it in position 2, and we can turn the journal this way, and once again we can find the center. We can open that up and we can start from the center hole on the inside and poke that through and pull that thread through and leave yourself a tail so that you don't pull it all the way through the hole. Use your clip to clip that down so you don't lose it. If I can clip my clip properly. Then we can go through the hole in the center hole in the cover to the outside and pull that through. And then we can go through the second hole in this line of the cover at the top. We might need to flick this back over and pull that through. And then we go through the top hole of the signature. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to find. And we pull through. Then we bring our thread all the way down to the bottom. And we go through the bottom hole of the signature. And we pull through. And then we go through the hole in the cover and we pull through, and then from the outside of the spine we go back through the center hole and we pull that through. And then we go back through the center hole in the signature and we pull that through. Now once again I've come back through the same side that the tail is already on, so what I'm going to do, I've actually put that through center of that tail, so I'm just going to split that tail for a moment and slide this back under here so that we've got a tail on either side of that center stitch. Give that a bit of a tug to make sure that it's nice and tight, and then we can tie this. And my threads are far too long, but I'd rather them be far too long than far too short, because as I said, we can always reuse the thread somehow else. And I'm just going to do a second knot in the center, pull that tight, and then you can do another bow if you want to. But what I think I might do is I'm just going to cut mine off short like this, and I'll go back and do that in the center signature as well. And I'll remove that. We can remove these big paper clips, and now we have two signatures stitched in. So we have two more signatures to stitch in. So I'm going to move this aside. I'm going to get my thread. I will thread my needle. That'll plenty. We can get the third signature and we can repeat this process. So going to the center of the signature, we go through the center hole of the signature and we pull it all the way through, remembering to leave ourselves a tail that we can clip to the edge of the signature, or in this case I'm just clipping it to the pocket inside the signature. And then we can go through the corresponding hole in the center of the cover spine to the outside and pull that through. Then we can go to the third hole in this line and put these ones back, and we can pull that through, and then we can go back through the top hole of the signature that corresponds with that line back to the inside of the signature, not bringing in the awl again. We can pull that through, then we can bring our string all the way down to the bottom, and we can go through the bottom hole to the outside of the signature, and then we can go through the corresponding hole at the bottom of the spine to the outside of the cover spine, and then we go back in through the center hole on the outside of the spine, and we can open this back up, find our needle and pull through, and then we can go back through the middle hole in the signature, back to the center, and I haven't got it in the center, have I? This is a little bit tricky. Now I've got it. And pull through. Now this is caught on something. What have we caught on? Those. Okay. So now I'll bring this up and hopefully you can see. You can see that I've managed to come up through the center of these two pieces in the middle. And that's not what I want to do. So I'm just going to make sure that I thread this under here so that I've got these tails either side of the center line. I'm just going to give everything a bit of a tug to tighten it all up. And then again I'm going to do tie a knot in the middle, and I'll do the same again a second time, and then I can cut off. So we have 3 signatures in, and we can take these big paper clips out, and then we have one more signature to put in, which is here. And we'll get some more thread. And we'll thread this up. And then we can repeat this process once again. So we can find the center of our signature. We can go through the the middle hole of the inside of the signature to the outside of the signature. And we pull through until we've got just a short tail, but keep this tail long enough that you can clip it to the edge of your page, or in this case I'm clipping it to the pocket here. Then once you've done that, you can put it through the corresponding hole in the spine of the cover through to the outside. Flip it all and go through the last hole in the top row. And then we need to flip all of this back again, find our needle, and pull that through. And then we go back through this top hole in the signature to back to the inside of the signature and pull that through. And we bring our string down to the bottom, and we go back in through this hole at the bottom. Back to the outside of the signature. And then back in through the corresponding hole, the last hole that you will have left at the bottom of your spine in your cover, and pull this through. And then go back in through the center hole. Open this up, find your needle, and look what I've done there. Well, I'm going to have to go back through there, aren't I? Because the reason I have to go back through here is because I have managed to get caught on my big paper clip, and I don't want to do that. So what I need to do is come back through here, no, what have I managed to do? Just a thread. It's just a tiny little thread. So I can, in the fabric that is, so I can actually just snip that. Like that. Then what I need to do is take it out from underneath this paper clip and move that paper clip so that we don't get caught again. Now we can go back through that hole to the outside, back through the center again. And then back through the center hole of the signature. And we'll just go under the middle thread so that we have both of our tails either side of that center thread, and we'll give everything a tug to make sure it's all tight. And we'll do a knot. And we'll do a double knot. And then we'll clip that off. Put that aside. We'll take these clips off. And we have 4 signatures bound into the spine, directly into the spine. And we have all of our signatures in line at the top and the bottom. So they all fit in there nicely. And they're all able to move. So you have a little bit of space between each. So that's what we want. So because I did a bow here and I haven't done a bow on the others, I'm actually just going to undo that bow, and I'm just going to clip that off. So there we have it, all bound. So the last thing we need to do is just add some other pieces. So in the next video we will be making some tags and some writing paper to go in the pockets and things. Then we'll make a writing board, and then we'll add some ephemera pieces and a closure, and we will be done. And the last video I do for this will be a flip through. So if you liked this video, please consider giving me a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so that YouTube can send you a notification when I upload new videos for you. Until then, next time, please stay safe out there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.